The loneliest room in my house was never the bedroom. It was the dining room. For 37 years, I polished a table that slowly forgot the sound of my family's laughter. 6 chairs stood around it like loyal soldiers, always ready, never needed. At 90 years old, I still run my hand across that smooth oak every morning, and sometimes I can almost hear plates being passed from one person to another. Then the silence reminds me that memory can imitate life, but it can never replace it. If you are still choosing between keeping your house perfect and keeping your family close, listen to an old woman who learned the difference too late. I lived in the same white farmhouse for 56 years. I planted every flower by hand, repaired every fence, painted every room at least 3 times, and could tell you exactly where every floorboard creaks. But ask me how many birthdays I cut short because there was work to do, or how many visits I postponed because the house wasn't ready, and I lose count. People admired my home. No one knew what it had cost me. When I was 48, my husband died after a short illness. Everyone expected I would sell the house. Instead, I promised myself I would preserve it exactly as we had built it together. At first, it felt like love. Every repaired window was another promise kept. Every freshly painted wall felt like proof that I had not given up. Somewhere along the way, I stopped preserving memories. I started preserving wood. My daughter noticed before I did. She would arrive with her little boy, who always ran ahead of her toward the porch. He loved exploring the garden, asking questions about birds, bringing strange rocks he found beside the road. One autumn afternoon, he held out a crooked little stick. "Grandma," he said, "look, it looks like a walking cane." I barely looked at it. "The porch needs sweeping first," I answered. He lowered his hand without saying a word. Children do not always cry when you disappoint them. Sometimes they simply stop asking. The neighbors called me hardworking. I accepted the compliment with a smile. What they never saw was my daughter loading her sleepy son back into the car while I stayed behind to finish washing windows before sunset. I always believed there would be another Sunday. There usually was, until there wasn't. Years passed with quiet efficiency. Every spring brought new flowers. Every summer meant repainting fences. Every winter meant polishing furniture no one used anymore. The house became more beautiful. The conversations became shorter. My daughter began calling instead of visiting. Then she called less often. Then birthdays became greeting cards. Then Christmas became a package left on the porch because everyone was spending the holidays somewhere else. I told myself young people were busy. I never admitted they had grown tired of competing with my endless list of chores. One rainy afternoon, when I was 76, my daughter phoned. "Mom," she said, "would you like to spend the weekend with us? The children miss you." I looked around the kitchen. The wallpaper had begun peeling near the ceiling. "I can't," I replied. "I need to fix a few things here." She was quiet. Then she said, "There will always be something to fix in that house." I laughed. She didn't. I stayed home. I repaired the wallpaper. I cannot remember how it looked when I finished. I remember every word she said. By 82, climbing ladders became difficult. By 85, my knees protested every staircase. Still, I refused help. The house had become the last thing that proved I was still useful. One afternoon, a storm tore down the old maple tree in the backyard. It had shaded birthday parties, summer picnics, and lazy afternoons when my husband read newspapers while our daughter chased butterflies. Now it lay across the lawn like a fallen giant. I stood at the window for nearly an hour. My first thought was to call my daughter. My second thought stopped me. What right did I have to ask for her time after spending decades refusing mine? I hired strangers instead. They cut the tree into pieces. When they left, the yard looked clean. It had never felt emptier. 3 months after my 90th birthday, a young couple knocked on my door. They had heard rumors that I might finally sell the property. I don't think I could ever leave, I told them. They asked if they could see the house anyway. As they wandered through each room, they admired the polished floors, the carved staircase, the antique cabinets, and the carefully pressed curtains. They complimented everything. Then the young woman stopped beside the dining table. She smiled and asked, "How many people usually gather here for dinner?" Such a simple question. I looked at the 6 chairs. Not one had been occupied in months. Some hadn't been moved in years. Finally, I answered, "Only me." She didn't speak for several seconds. Then she gently touched the back of one chair and said, "My grandmother always told me that furniture wears out from being used, but homes wear out from waiting." No one had ever described my life so gently or so accurately. After they left, I remained in that dining room until sunset. The evening light stretched across the table, revealing tiny scratches I had never noticed before. For years I had tried to erase every mark. Suddenly, I wished there had been more. Children's pencils, spilled soup, sticky fingerprints, a forgotten playing card, proof that life had happened here. Instead, everything was nearly perfect and painfully untouched. That evening, I found an old cardboard box in the attic. Inside were dozens of drawings my grandson had made as a child. One picture showed our house. The roof was crooked, the flowers were purple instead of red, smoke curled from the chimney. 4 people stood outside holding hands. On the back he had written, in uneven letters, "Grandma's house is happy." I cried harder over that drawing than I had at my husband's funeral, because somewhere between that picture and the woman I became, I had confused taking care of a house with taking care of the people who loved it. They were never asking for spotless floors. They were asking for me. Now I keep that drawing framed in the dining room. It hangs where everyone can see it, especially me. When my great-granddaughter visits, she brings crayons instead of flowers. She draws at the dining table without asking permission. Sometimes she leaves little circles of blue and green on the wood. I wipe them away after she leaves. Not immediately. I let them stay for a while. The table finally looks as though it belongs to a family again. If you think there will always be another weekend, another birthday, another visit after you finish one more task, ask yourself one question. When the house is finally perfect, who are you hoping will still be there to admire it? I still live in the same old farmhouse. The porch creaks louder than it used to. The paint fades a little more each year. There are weeds where roses once grew. None of that troubles me anymore, because now, when someone knocks on my door, I don't apologize for the dust. I open it before they have the chance to knock a second time. The dining room is no longer the loneliest room in my house. It is the noisiest. Sometimes there are crumbs on the table. Sometimes toys are left beneath the chairs. Sometimes the dishes stay in the sink until morning. I have learned that a little disorder is often the sound of love making itself comfortable. The walls are older now, so am I, but at last, this house feels lived in instead of merely cared for. And every evening, before I turn off the lights, I look once at that child's drawing. The roof is still crooked, the flowers are still purple, the people are still holding hands. That little picture understands home better than I did for half my life.